So we're starting a brand new series of discussion, and this has a totally different twist to the whole spiritual aspect of life, and it's using the science basically to reach to the samadhi. So the name of the series is Science to Samadhi.
Oh, really?
We always
I
had
didn't read
stress
that
to
one.
samadhi, so now we have science to samadhi. So it's based on, and the inspiration is derived from Rajneesh's Yoga Ke Naye Ayam. So new facets of yoga. Basically the same facts which had been explored by our rishis in ancient times. And now they are being corroborated by the scientific facts now. So we're going to use a science to really reach to the state of samadhi. And either way it will prove that the state that you reach is basically the same state that you will reach, whichever aspect you want to believe in, whichever aspect you want to take it. The only difference is the yoga by itself has lost credibility because of the corrupted so-called religions and all that, but the fact that has been hidden behind it has not disappeared, thankfully. But just another way of approach has changed, and the science has taken more and more precedence in our life only because the evidences are right in front of us. We have been able to measure and all these things. So, but the real crux of the matter is that eventually, no matter which route you take, you reach to the same truth. And the same truth is always going to be trans generations, trans life, trans many evolutions over thousands of years. The fact had always been the same, and it will always be the same. But now we are having a scientific approach and reaching the same spot. So now we're going to start the series, Science to Samadhi. So yoga is basically connection to the higher self. The approach to the yoga should be scientific. Like anything you want to do in life, you want to have an open mind, first of all. You have to be open to suggestions, and you have to be ready to accept whatever is going to be the results of your experiment. If you don't have honesty, and if you don't have openness, then you're biased right from the beginning. And if you're biased, your results are going to be faulted, because even if the result is there, you're not going to accept it, and if you want, and you're going to twist the results, and you're going to either use it to your advantage or ultimately to your own disadvantage. So approach to the yoga also should be in a totally scientific way. So the faith that so-called religions have been prescribing all these years, that you have to have faith so that you can reach to Paramatma, it's not a prerequisite, because faith is like blind faith, blind belief, and that's totally anti-science. If you already believe in the results of an experiment before the experiment started, what's the point? That again, you're walking into an experiment with a fixed mind. So basically you're not going to accept. So basically like shoving down your throat that you have to have this. So faith is a totally nonsense. And that's why, because once you have a faith in something, your mind is closed. It does not remain open anymore. So we require that a scientific approach to the yoga should be like a child. He has an open mind. He doesn't know anything. He hasn't been told anything. So he's walking around wondering what's going to happen. And that curiosity, the curiousness of life, the positive approach to the life, and being able to be ready to accept whatever comes in the way, that kind of openness is what is required to go on the path of yoga, or to that matter, any experiment in science. That curiosity, that naiveness, that unknowingness should be a prerequisite. So, ultimate goal of the yoga is to reach the state of Advaita. And happy to say that science also has been contributing significantly and is taking unto a state of Advaita. With all the scientific experiments that has been coming back and forth and ultimately proving and showing the state of Advaita is the ultimate final holy grail. So the all these sutras that scientific sutras are now, we call, just like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that he had set based on the spiritual knowledge that he had acquired, spiritual experiences that he had acquired. Now, basically, now we're going to use the science, and we're going to have 9 sutras, and we will discuss one by one. Each sutra, again, backed up by the scientific theories and scientific facts and things like that. So, first sutra that we're going to talk about, and believe me, all these sutras have nothing to do with religions, that so-called religion. And yet, without these scientific sutras, none of the religions can exist, even though the religions are being used in a corrupted way to take the advantage of all this knowledge that people had, to use it to their advantage. It has been a mistake of the so-called religions. So it is kind of religion, but it's not a traditional religion that it's going to be supporting. So the first sutra we're going to talk about is the fact that we have to start accepting and understanding and realizing that life is nothing but energy. So we're going to talk more about it. That so far over the evolution of many years, last, you would say 5,000 years back, there was hardly no science. And then in the medieval times, when the science started, experimenting with the facts, Newtonian physics came out, and at that time, the church was everything for almost 1500, 2000 years after Christ. Religion was everything. And religion said that man is the center. Everything else is revolving around it. And Newtonian physics came along the way, and he says, not really. Everything is interdependent. We are bound by the same gravitational force that brings the apple down to the earth. The same gravitational force has been binding the orbiting, the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets, and all of a sudden, man was not the center. Man was not holding the center of attention of the whole universe. The universe was not necessarily going around the man. All of a sudden, all the convictions that were being prescribed and preached by the religion was breaking apart. So, and Newton himself was a religious guy. He attended the church regularly and all that, but he just could not have a blind faith about the experiments he was coming across and the facts which were coming out. He could not just close his eyes towards the facts. So there was a branch of science was emerging little by little by little. But at that time at least, the science had a firm belief in the matter. There was really no concept of energy. There was no concept of any forces controlling this matter. For example, the gravity. Why does the apple have to come down to the earth? The unknown force was binding, was attracting. It was not that apple had its own energy to travel in certain direction. It was literally being forced by the gravitational force. Now that we know about gravitational force, it's easy to understand that. But at that time, the concept of some unknown force which could be guiding the directions and the movement of all these material objects just did not exist. So science believed that matter is all we know, and matter is all we should deal with, and this is it. And they, little by little, Newtonian physics started developing. And at that point, the Newtonian physics also had its limitations, because now the matter we went beyond, and then now we started establishing the principles which will control the matter, how the gravitational force, electromagnetic force, but all the time the involvement was in the material life that we knew. And the most we knew was the forces which control, but that's about it. And there were certain fixed results you could prove, that if an object is traveling at such and such speed, it will arrive at such and such place in such and such time, because it has the momentum, it has the mass, it has the force within itself. and then ultimately it will reach certain spot. So all these things were laws of physics. Again, the problem came in that anything beyond that, there was no knowledge. And we're talking about quantum physics. That came later in the picture. But at that time, the science declared, now the science was becoming boisterous. Now it said that it had known all the rules and the regulations of the material world. So there was no role for God anymore. So they said the God does not exist. What exists is matter, and that's all there was. So ultimately, again, the pitfall came. The limitations of the science came. So at that point, the science believed that matter is the only existence that we have to deal with. There is no place for God. The God is an unknown entity that religion had been prescribing all along, preaching all along, but there was no really evidence of God. So, but yoga always held the contention that matter that you see is not what it appears to be. And what it is cannot appear in front of you. So matter is all we perceive with our senses. The Newtonian physics believed that this is all there is. There are laws to control it and all that, but there is nothing beyond that. So science had its pitfall, but yoga for thousands of years has been saying that material world is an illusion. There is something much more beyond that, and the science had no knowledge of it. So science at one time declared literally that God is dead, there is nothing like soul, it's all about matter, and material world is the only thing that exists. But now the science is saying, and it has turned 180 degrees after realization through the quantum physics and all the experiments of quantum physics, that matter does not exist. What exists is only the thing that exists is the energy. Energy in a different form is matter, and energy in another form is energy. So it's like an ocean. One shore of ocean is matter, and another shore of the existence is spirit. So invisible, when the matter start fading into invisibility spectrum, becomes the spirit, and when the spirit comes in a visible spectrum, it becomes the matter. The only difference is our capacity to perceive starts somewhere in between, and at some point through our senses we start perceiving, and when we start perceiving we call it matter, because we can share with each other, we can talk about it, all these things. But it's like a slider slip switch. We have a dimmer switch in the room, that when it's to the fullest, there is full light in the room, and when we bring it down to the lowest level, when you can say that light is dimming and dimming and dimming, and light is still there, but it's not perceivable. And when it becomes fully perceivable, so there is a continuum rather than a breakup. So that's where the mistake came of some of the religions, like Jainism. They started believing that body and the soul are two different things. So that was another mistake. But again, this is evolution of the knowledge. There is nothing to be blamed or nobody to be blamed in one particular aspect. But ultimately, it's the knowledge that we're really learning is a confluence of everything to really describe the dance of life. So again, our evolution of our mind, evolution of our understanding of the whole surrounding is taking us into the direction, ultimately, to the seat of, highest seat is Advaita. So now the science knows that appearance of matter is an illusion. It does not say that it does not exist. It does exist, but only if we apply our senses. If we do not apply our senses, it becomes an energy. So the real thing behind all that is ultimately the energy, E equal to mc square. When energy is subjected the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, and a square root of that, not square root, square of that becomes the matter. Because at a tremendous speed, when the energy is rotating, it becomes a particle that we can perceive. Now, it's like Rajneesh gives us simple example that if you see a fan rotating, you can see the individual blades. When it really starts speeding up, you really cannot tell whether there are individual blades or not. Even at that point, you may be lucky, you throw a ball. And maybe if you time it perfect, or if the timing happens perfect, the ball may be able to go through that, maybe catching the space in between. But if you really increase the speed of the blades even faster, you throw the ball does not have time to penetrate, because as soon as one blade is missed, another blade is replacing, and it will hit the blade and fall back. You go even further and you rotate the blade at theoretically 186,000 miles a second, it becomes a solid. You cannot perceive. Our senses are not ready or not able to perceive any speed at that point. It becomes a solid thing. In fact, the ground that we are standing on, all the particles which make up the ground, which is the molecules and atoms and subatomic particles and protons and neutrons, are nothing but energy rotating at 186,000 miles a second and square of that, and we call it a solid ground. So our beliefs of solidity is falling apart now that we have gone further deep into the scientific experiment into quantum physics. So now Newtonian physics is being challenged. Not that Newtonian physics is useless. Newtonian physics teaches us the laws of modern matter. Without Newtonian physics, a man on the moon would not have been possible. It has predicted the motions of the planets, motions of the moons and the stars and another planets, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. All these things are calculated based on Newtonian laws. So believe me, Newtonian physics was a great achievement. But now, leaping into the quantum physics is creating a problem, because we have firm belief in Newtonian physics, but now when we go into the quantum level, all our beliefs are falling apart. All the laws which were governing the Newtonian physics, now the new laws have to be written. And in the quantum physics, the total different approach has to be needed. And we're going to go further detail into that. So the solidity and the steadiness which we had a belief in is being shattered. There is nothing steady in the world. There is a constant motion. What can move is the energy. Even when a material seems to be moving from point A to the point B, is all because of the energy. It's the motion of the energy. And that motion itself creates the illusion of the matter and the material objects colliding with each other, controlled of course by the Newtonian laws, but all that seems like a play. So the illusion that is outside is also being played even at the smallest level. And the atoms and the electrons and the protons and the neutrons, all these are part of that illusion, as if they're all dancing at the same time. And the interesting thing that is coming out in the quantum physics, that the presence of the observer himself or herself is changing the results. For the first time, the objectivity that the scientists were holding is also becoming a problem. For example, if you start an experiment and you want to be 100% objective without putting your opinions or your beliefs into the experiment, you do it with 100% scientific way, that you want to put substance A with substance B, and then finally substance C is created. You want to write down everything, that this is what I started with, this is what I did, and this is the final outcome. You can remain totally objective and not get involved. The problem in quantum physics has been the fact that you are there, it changes the results. And you cannot help it. At a very, very minute level, when you start playing with the energy, all of a sudden you realize that the particles that you believed are not particles anymore. Now, they are in certain experiments, and they are not in certain experiments. So, what you want to, like for example, light, we know, can be a particle, or it can be a wave. Wave is energy. So, whatever results you want, you can choose whichever experiment you want, and that experiment will show you that it's a particle. If you want the light to be called an energy, you choose another experiment. So, depends upon you which experiment you choose will prove the results, whether it's particle or energy. In fact, they had to create a new term altogether, quanta. Quanta is nothing but packet of energy. That's all there is. The only thing is that energy divided into small quanta is called quanta, but we call it a particle. But it's their packets of energy. But there is a very thin line which blurs. Now, packet of matter you can understand. Say packet of bullets you can understand. Grains of sand you can understand. It's all material things. But you're talking about going deeper and deeper and deeper at a very, very energy levels, packets of energy. Now, what kind of language is that? On one hand, it's a packet, so you can say that there is a certain quantity of packet being delivered. But at the same time, it's a packet of energy. It's like flour made out of space. It has no value. There is nothing solid about it. So those kind of dilemma the scientists are dealing with at the quantum level now.